Okay, guys, we're gonna get moving. We just have 5 bills. Some of them only have like one witness and such, but so why don't we knock out one of those quickly? We've got Senate Bill 255. Again, just one witness for this bill, Anna Sierra from the Maryland Department of Emergency Management. And again, Senate Bill 255 and Ms. Sierra, you take the time you need to present the bill and you're signed up favorable. So it's basically a departmental bill. Okay. Yes. Yeah, go on.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was waiting for the red light here.
Absolutely.
For the record, I'm Anna Sierra. I'm the Chief Development Officer and Legislative Liaison for the Department of Emergency Management. Thank you so much for having me today. As the chair mentioned, we have a departmental bill in front of you. This is a technical fix. When the Department of Emergency Management became the Department of Emergency Management, we separated from the military department where we were managing the Volunteer Company Assistance Fund program for them. That is the VCAF. It's a loan program for volunteer fire departments to replace apparatus and a variety of other things. When we separated, this part of statute did not get updated to be under us. So we've been operating under a memorandum of agreement with the military department. We have chatted with them. They have no problem. This is already in our budget. We have the staff for it. It's just a legislative fix.
Any questions for our lone witness?
I'm just gonna.
Yes, Vice Chair Kagan.
We can't have Anna Sierra, the awesome Anna Sierra, back in our committee for the second time and not have me give her a shout out. For those of you who may not have had the wonderful opportunity to work with her, Anna used to run the 911 center, 2 different 911 centers on the Eastern Shore. And then we were lucky enough to get her at MEMA, which then became MDEM. And she just does just super important and top-notch work. So Anna, always a delight to be with you, and thanks for all you do.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair.
Okay, any additional shout outs necessary for Ms. Sierra? Seeing none. That concludes the bill hearing on Senate Bill 255. Okay, we're in the next go. I do see both Secretaries Flora and Day here. You guys have any preference as to who you want me to make the call? You want me to make the tough call? Okay.
Your call, my money in Flora.
Okay, let's go ladies first. I hate to say that, but okay. Secretary Flora, why don't you come?
The good news is I'm coming up for this.
You're coming in together? Okay, which we're talking Senate, which bill are we talking about? Senate Bill
Sustainable growth. 309.
309? Okay, we are now on Senate Bill 309, and why don't we start with you, Secretary Flora, to maybe present the bill. First of all, tell us who you are, and then each of you will have the time you need to present the bill. Okay, so or whoever wants to lead off, Secretary Day or Flora.
I will kick off. Is it on? Yes. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Chair Feldman and Vice Chair Kagan. I am Rebecca Flora, Secretary of Planning, here to present Senate Bill 309. And we are here to essentially update the smart growth sub-cabinet legislation that's about 25 years old, and essentially do a couple of things. With me here today, of course, is Secretary Day, who through this update would become the new Vice Chair of the Sustainable Growth Sub-Cabinet that we'd be renaming it to. And then I also have Chuck Boyd, our Assistant Secretary of Planning, with me here today to help answer any questions. So basically what this bill does is a couple of key things. First and foremost, I really want to stress that it builds on the great successes of the last 25 years when this was first really launched by Governor Glendening, and I do have a statement from Governor Glendening that I want to share before I close my remarks. So we're building on that, but we're really basically expanding the focus from what was a lot around land use policy and principles to the broader issues of sustainable growth, which really is a balance between this economic growth that we must move forward on, but then including issues of equity, resiliency, and then of course our continued commitment to the environmental aspects of what was smart growth and this broader definition of sustainable growth. The other thing we're doing is in that adding resiliency and equity is 2 key topic areas to our focus in addition to the ones that were already there. And as part of that, with the pressing and critical needs of resiliency, we'd be adding an additional secretary to the subcabinet membership, and that would be the Secretary of MDEM, Secretary Strickland in this case, right now would be added. And those are sort of the big changes. The other big thing that I know maybe have gotten people's attention is that it calls for the elimination of the Office of Smart Growth. Actually, the Office of Smart Growth, when it was established in Governor Glendenning's office. And so it moved out of that office literally 2 years later, and it's been operating inside of the Maryland Department of Planning, who is the primary staff, really ever since that time. So we're essentially cleaning up the bill to recognize and acknowledge that reality. And in doing that, also referencing the Special Secretary of Smart Growth, and that really isn't relevant anymore, being that it wouldn't be in the governor's office, and it hasn't been in the governor's office for quite some time. So eliminating that position, which was named as the chair, Secretary of Planning was named as vice chair, we'd eliminate that position. I would move into the chair position, which has really been in practice what's been going on for quite some time. And then we'd be bringing on Secretary Day as the vice chair, and look forward to that added collaboration. So those are the big things that we're addressing. I want to just, before I close and turn it over to Secretary Day to add his comments, if I may read the statement from Governor Glendenning regarding this. We started conversations with him last fall, and he is in support of this bill also, and just would like to read his statement. One of the most exciting and impactful accomplishments during my 31 years in elected office was the creation of the Maryland Smart Growth Program. The successful implementation of this program was in large part the result of the important work of the Smart Growth Subcabinet. This crucial group brings together the key stakeholders of Maryland's agencies to collaborate and coordinate the state's efforts in smart growth and effect positive change across our state's communities. Now, over 25 years have passed since its inception, and I am honored to see the evolution of the subcabinet and the work it's doing. By ensuring the important themes of equity, resiliency, and sustainability are added to the statute, the subcabinet is addressing key issues within the principles of contemporary smart growth mission. This legislation shows the subcabinet's commitment to advancing this mission and solidifying the importance of the work of this group, and an urgency to address the needs of smart and sustainable growth. I support the changes advanced in this legislation. They will help the subcabinet achieve its urgent and important mission. And that was quoted from former Governor Glendenning, really the father of this the smart growth policy that we're evolving to sustainable growth. And so with that, I'm done, and we'll be here for questions, as will Chuck, and would like to turn it over to Secretary Day to make some remarks.
Secretary Day, the floor is yours.
Chair Feldman, Vice Chair Kagan, and members of the committee, good afternoon. Thank you so much for your time. For the record, my name is Jake Day, Secretary of Housing and Community Development. I'm proud to join Secretary Flora, the Secretary of Planning here, who I think it's important that I share, was my professor of sustainable community development at Carnegie Mellon University many years ago. So anything that I say that's right after this, please know, should be attributed to her.
Can I just inject that, and Secretary knows I'm, born and raised Pittsburgh boy, grew up literally down the street from Carnegie Mellon. So
yes, sir.
I know that school very well.
Well, Chair, it's a great town. Football teams aside. I want to start off by saying that the Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development has had an important role as Maryland's place-based economic development and housing agency, and plays an important resource allocation and application role in neighborhood revitalization. And neighborhood revitalization is a term that was paired with smart growth in the early days, and still exists in a variety of ways. We even have an Assistant Secretary of Neighborhood Revitalization, Carol Gilbert, who is a member of the subcabinet along with myself and Secretary Flora. We have relationships with other institutions such as the National Center for Smart Growth Research and Education at the University of Maryland, all of which are part of the strong collaborative partnership on addressing the next generation of smart and ultimately sustainable growth for the state of Maryland. So we want to increase the efficacy and efficiency not only of the subcabinet but of those efforts. And so this piece of legislation proposes several critical changes that Secretary Flora outlined, including the addition of of Secretary Strickland, the MDEM secretary, and the appointment of herself as chair, or the Secretary of Planning as chair and Secretary of Housing and Community Development as vice chair. I think these are valuable and thoughtful alterations that will better position Maryland to address the challenges including climate change, and challenges including the equity issues and justice issues that we're talking about in a later conversation today. I think it's really important. I think it's critically important that we increase our focus on equitable development as we ensure that we are protecting Maryland's valuable resources. The effects of past disinvestment can look like negative environmental externalities. They can look like worse health outcomes. They can look like limited access to healthy foods. They can look like limited access to green space for hundreds of thousands of Marylanders, just to name a few. So incorporating equity and resilience and sustainability into the mission of the sub-cabinet will make us a stronger team ultimately. So I encourage a favorable report on this piece of legislation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, and sir, are you just here for questions? Okay, who are you? Just put you so we know who's at the table.
For the record, I'm Chuck Boyd. I'm the Assistant Secretary of Planning Services.
Okay, and I know Chuck Cook also signed up, but you're just here for support. Okay. Any questions for our two secretaries, either Flora or Day? Senator Hester.
I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank you both for the hard work you did this interim on the the previously owned historic complexes work that the Sustainable Cabinet did. And I was just wondering if there's anything that you wanted to say about that.
Yeah, it really was, I think, a great example. Thank you for sharing that. And that we, as a sub-cabinet, I didn't go into a lot of the details, but we did have some legislative assignments from the last session, one of which was to really shepherd that historic properties in the complex report forward. And that's kind of how we operate. So with all of those collaborative agencies, and then Chuck actually chairs the Smart Growth Coordinating Committee, which we call the worker bees, that kind of get the work done. And so really want to acknowledge the work of Carol and her team and working with others to deliver that report to you all, because it really is a great example of how we can take these cross-agency type issues, bring everybody together, especially as it relates to growth and development through this sub-cabinet, which is such an important place to do that. But Secretary.
Senator, I'll just add thank you for your leadership on that issue, and I'll note that there are a couple of pieces of legislation. I know we're not here to discuss those today, but a couple of other pieces of legislation that will help to build upon that work moving forward.
Okay, Senator Carrozza.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Secretary Day, Madam Secretary. Good to see you. I want to first thank you. Obviously, with the Secretary Day being the former mayor of Salisbury and living there now, we are fortunate because you'll keep an extra eye out on the shore priorities, and appreciated you, Madam Secretary, going to Smith Island. My question, though, I think would be for Secretary Day, but if you would like to add to it, you have been kind enough to come down and really take a hard look at the challenges with housing in Crisfield. You also know the district with some of the smaller municipalities that don't quite have the resources of a Salisbury or an Ocean City, like a Snow Hill and Princess Anne. I guess my question is, now that you've been in the saddle for a bit, have you taken a step back to look at how those communities can basically grow to the next level with their housing challenges?
So Senator, thank you for that question. And I'll go back to a point I made. It was around the confirmation hearings. I can't remember if it was at the time of my confirmation through exec noms or another conversation. But one of the things that we discussed, and this really gets right to the heart of the question of how we grow as a state and how we grow sustainably, is layering resources in a strategic way in the places that have been historically disinvested. And whether it's recently speaking to the Snow Hill Chamber of Commerce or touring Crisfield with the mayor and commissioners there, or at UMES talking about the future of Main Street Princess Anne, in each of those cases, I think we have done not a complete job yet at layering all of the resources that we have at our disposal. I'm also a believer, not surprisingly, that we need more resources, and I believe that you'll see that reflected in the governor's budget, and I hope that full consideration will be given to those needs. That there are a couple of programs that the state has designed long before me that are incredibly effective at doing transformative work, leveraging huge private investment and leveraging fantastic economic outcomes. And it's when we pair those together sufficiently in concentrated ways that we produce big returns. And it goes beyond just state revitalization programs. I'm speaking primarily about SRP or state revitalization programs, but I would say the Maryland Mortgage Program, our recently announced Uplift program, which is the appraisal gap legislation that the General Assembly passed, pairing those resources into concentrated areas through measured, focused geographic strategies, not unlike the one that was undertaken to create Uplift, the new appraisal gap program, are precisely the way to produce bigger outcomes and better outcomes. So I think we're gonna see the fruits of some of that. I'm really confident that we will in each of the towns that you mentioned and that I mentioned, and I believe that's going to be true statewide.
Just one technical, Secretary Day, you signed up favorable with amendments. Was that a mistake? I mean, you're just straight up favorable. You don't have any amendments. You're showing up here that
Mr.
are.
Chair, I blame
Okay.
Chuck Cook.
Okay,
for that.
it's all Chuck Cook's fault. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that was the right answer. Okay, any additional questions for the panel? Okay, seeing none, that concludes bill hearing on Senate Bill 309. Why don't
you
you
all.
take a seat, because I want to get Senator McCray up here because he's doing some really, really important budget work over there in B&T, and he needs to get back there and might even have your budgets in front of him, so we don't get him mad. So we're gonna go to Senate Bill 341, Senator McCray, and I've got some witnesses signed up here, all favorable. Can I bring some folks? Oh, you tell me. We've got Maya Davis signed up, Chanel Compton, and then we have Christiana Limniitis, who is she virtual? Do we have somebody virtual? Any virtual? Yes. Okay, so I'll sign up straight favorable. So Senator McCray, you take the time you need, and you're going to present Senate Bill 341.
I appreciate you, Mr. Chair and Madam Vice Chair. I promise I will not be long as our secretary. Members of the committee, for the record, Corey McCray, Senator for the 45th Legislative District. I come before you in reference to Senate Bill 341, which is a very easy bill, very good bill. I'm not sure that you all know, but Banneker Douglas has been right down the street from us, and I was able to learn that when I first got in the House of Delegates from that piece of it. Madam Executive Director, has come before us with a phenomenal suggestion, Mr. Chair, where she says from an equity standpoint that we should rename the Banneker Douglas Museum the Banneker Douglas Tubman Museum. Harriet Tubman is a phenomenal Marylander. She's a woman, and we should also acknowledge the great contributions that she's done for our great state of Maryland, but all across our country, I should say that and lift that up. I'm gonna stop doing the talking because I think that they can do the rest and do a better job of it, but hopefully we will get a favorable report for Senate Bill 341.
Okay, who wants to go next? And then make sure you tell us your name.
For the record, my name is Maya Davis, and I'm the Vice Chair of the Maryland Commission on African American History and Culture. The Maryland Commission on African American History and Culture operates the Banneker Douglas Museum, a museum dedicated to documenting, interpreting, and promoting African American history and culture. When this museum opened in 1984, the commission had over 5 years of discussions and debates on the potential name of the museum. One of the proposed names for the museum was the Banneker Douglas Tubman Museum. Some of the members of the commission thought that to have 3 names was too long, while others, not understanding Harriet Tubman's contribution to history, didn't find her worthy of being included in the name. Since that time in 1984, much research has been uncovered on the life and legacy of Harriet Tubman, a formerly enslaved woman from Dorchester County, Maryland, who liberated herself, her family, and other acquaintances in this state and beyond its borders in states like Delaware, New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, and South Carolina, and internationally in Canada. Her impact on African American history and culture and the Black diaspora is documented in the records of the aforementioned states, written on extensively by scholars, memorialized internationally, and portrayed in film and television series. Harriet Tubman is one of the beacons and icons of our great state and this country and deserves to have her name placed on the marquee of this amazing museum as a testament to her heroic efforts, her connection to Maryland's African-American history and culture, and as an acknowledgement of the power and achievements of Black women in Maryland. In a post-patriarchal Maryland, the Commission wants to demonstrate our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion by including the name of one of our most powerful women from the state of Maryland, Harriet Tubman, to the Banneker Douglas Museum's name. We encourage you to consider favorable support for changing the name of the Banneker Douglas Museum to the Banneker Douglas Tubman Museum. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, tell us who you are.
Chanel Compton Johnson, Executive Director of the Banneker Douglas Museum, hopefully soon to be the Banneker Douglas Tubman Museum. Thank you, Chair Feldman and members of this committee for hearing our testimony today, and we hope that you vote in favorable of Senate Bill 341. My esteemed colleague, Maya Davis, gave you a great summary of the life and work of Harriet Tubman, but I will add that this year in 2024 is the 60th anniversary of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. This year, 2024, is the 60th anniversary of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. And it's also the 160th anniversary of Maryland emancipation. So during this milestone year, it would be more than fitting to honor a woman who represents freedom and justice in the great state of Maryland. Harriet Tubman, after she became an abolitionist, she went on to become a woman suffragist. And during her work as an abolitionist, she served for the Union Army. Many people don't know that Tubman was the first woman to lead a major military operation, freeing 700 enslaved people during the Civil War. So I urge you to vote in favor of this bill. Naming her would honor this incredible hero and symbolize the Black women whose many contributions helped shape this state, this country, and American democracy for all. Thank you.
We have one virtual witness. Okay, we're going to take we have one virtual witness, then we'll open up maybe any kind of questions. So we see you, we hear you, I think. Well, why don't you, you've got 2 minutes to weigh in straight favorable on Senate Bill 341, okay? And tell us who you are.
My name is Christiana Limniadis from Preservation, Maryland. On behalf of our staff, board of directors, and our thousands of statewide supporters, I thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony in support of SB 341, a piece of legislation that will establish a new name for the museum operated by the Commission on African American History and Culture. Preservation Maryland is the nonprofit statewide voice for historic preservation that harnesses the power of historic places by revitalizing and reinvesting in communities and advocating and building the historic trades workforce to benefit all Marylanders. The museum's proposed name, Banneker Douglas Tubman, will strengthen the museum's effort to honor and include Harriet Tubman as the museum's namesake. Harriet Tubman's work as an abolitionist and social activist is a critical part of American history, and Tubman's history is intertwined with that of Maryland's, some of which include her birthplaces in Dorchester County, Maryland, and the routes where she guided enslaved people to freedom. One of the more frequent routes that she used was on the Choptank River through Caroline County. The addition of Harriet Tubman's name to the Banneker Douglas Museum will further honor Tubman and support the museum's mission to document, interpret, and promote African American history and culture. SB 341 is an enhancing piece of legislation, and we urge a favorable report. Thank you.
Okay, do we have any questions for either sponsor or any of the witnesses? Okay, Senator Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much for this bill. Thank you for this work. And it is the first day of Black History Month, so it's actually fortuitous that you're coming today. And I would like the chair to consider a motion to take a vote on this bill and to move by acclamation. Why
are you moving favorable?
Moving favorable by acclamation.
Okay, is there a second from anybody on the committee? Second from Senator Brooks. Okay, and also for the folks who aren't here, we'll keep the vote open. And Well, before we do that, anybody want to be a sponsor of this bill? Okay, who wants to be a co-sponsor of the bill? Raise your hand. Yeah. Well, no, we're going to keep it open. They'll be able to add on after the fact. So, okay, we've got these names and we'll keep it open for the other two. Yeah, okay, we got Simon Air, Washington, Carosa, Brooks, Lewis Young, Gallion, Augustine, Kagan, and Feldman. And we'll keep it open for if Watson and Hester want to get on. All in favor of the bill as amended, raise your hand. All opposed, that bill carries. Congratulations. And again, it is timely and topical. So thank you. And that concludes. Yes. Vice Chair
Just
Kagan.
for our wonderful witnesses, thank you for what you do, Senator McCray, of course, all that you do. But this is not common practice. This is really special and definitely the first one of the year. And we might do one a year, maybe. So this is a big deal. And thank you for your leadership and your important messages.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you.
Okay, so that concludes the bill hearing on Senate Bill 341. And Secretary Day, you want to come back up here on Senate Bill 308, and then we'll get to, I think Senator Muse came in. We'll take him after this. So Secretary Day, we're on Senate Bill 308. And I don't know who you want to bring up. Okay, you have somebody there. You've got a panel. So we'll start with you, Secretary Day. Again, Senate Bill 308. And we'll go through the panel after you speak, okay?
So Mr. Chair, so Chair Feldman, Vice Chair Kagan, members of the committee, thank you again. Once again, for the record, Jake Day, Secretary of Housing and Community Development. I'm joined to my left by Assistant Secretary Kat Gogenauer. And I appreciate the opportunity to testify today and introduce to you Senate Bill 308. Being joined today again by Assistant Secretary for Just Communities, Kat Gogenauer, which is a new position created by the agency in December of 2023. When I was appointed Secretary of the Department, I outlined 5 major objectives. They are pursuing shelter for all, expanding affordable housing, making lovable places, connecting all Marylanders, and finally, righting the wrongs of the past. Often, we visit injury after injury upon the same poor communities, often communities of color, over and over again. And at this point, government has to do more than rebuild structures and restore services. Because I assure you, just as this is a deliberate exercise to direct resources, every injustice was not the result of some clumsy bureaucracy, but rather was a deliberate and motivated effort. Our motivation now is to rebuild trust and to restore hope. We have to get it right this time. As we pursue equity and equal access to opportunity for all, we must also pursue justice for those places who have been the victims of historic and deliberate injustices. One of the ways we plan to do that and why we're here today is through the creation of the new Just Community designation. This will create a new geographic data layer similar to sustainable communities to target state investment. A future just community has past and current economic housing trends that demonstrate a need for reinvestment in that area. They must demonstrate the community has been impacted by forms of legal racial segregation, such as redlining, urban highway construction, such as we see with the highway to nowhere in Baltimore City, or even routes 13 and 50 in my town, high state imprisonment rates, or unequal exposure to environmental or health hazards. Eligible communities will receive a 5-year Just Community designation from the governor based upon recommendations from our department. I want to point out again that the new division created, the Division of Just Communities and the Assistant Secretary of Just Communities, created just a month ago, is an entity that did not previously exist and has not existed in any other state government nationwide. I'm about to hand things over to Kat Gogenauer, the new Assistant Secretary for Just Communities, who is previously the Racial Wealth Equity Fellow at Prosperity Now and has a long career as a human rights consultant and a racial and housing policy leader. Assistant Secretary Gogenauer will now speak to some of the more finer details of the bill.
Okay, welcome. And again, repeat your name just for the record so everybody hears.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Secretary Day, Chair Feldman, Vice Chair Kagan. I'm Kat Gogenauer, Assistant Secretary, Just Communities. As Secretary Day has said, I'm 1 month in, very excited to be here. And excited to talk a little bit more about this auspicious moment. There are many things that are kind of converging at this time that legitimize and make even more powerful the Just Communities designation. There is a recent release of an Eco Districts protocol with a partnership for Southern Equity that's entitled Just Communities. There's also a lot of research coming out for renewed interest by philanthropy in public and private sector partnerships. So this auspicious moment sets the groundwork that will mean that projects in geographic areas designated as Just Communities will receive priority consideration for competitive state funding. The Just Community data layer will create a proactive approach to target state investments to help reverse the decades of disinvestment and exclusionary policies. The Just Communities designation will also affirmatively advance equity, civil rights, racial justice, and equal opportunity in the state of Maryland. It will create opportunities for the improvement of communities that have been historically underserved with anticipated benefits for the entire state and right the wrongs of the past, wherein the state systematically excluded certain groups from equal participation in the benefits of public resources. These efforts are critically important, and it's a wonderful time to be able to present such legislation. The team in our newly created Division of Just Communities will work with other offices in DHCD to build and strengthen partnerships in these communities to make sure we are respectful of and responsive to the needs of residents. The creation of the Just Community designation and division marks a new and focused effort by DHCD in the state of Maryland to remedy the injuries of the past to affected minoritized communities. It will create another mechanism to open these pathways to opportunities in communities that have been previously denied them and ensure that no Marylander is left behind. Thank you so much, and we're happy to answer questions.
Okay, thank you. Okay, who wants to go next? Secretary, who would like to select?
Excellent.
Okay, and pass that mic down and speak into that mic. Tell us who you are.
Sure. Thank you, Chairman, Vice Chair, members of the committee, and to the department for this invitation. My name is Somil Trivedi. I'm Chief Legal and Advocacy Director at Maryland Legal Aid. And we agree with the Secretary that it is high time that our state directly address the sins of both the past and the present, and finally and once and for all invest in historically abused communities. Maryland Legal Aid knows these communities because we are the state's largest provider of free civil legal services to the low-income people living in them. And sadly, despite being one of the richest states in our nation, we still have hundreds of thousands of people living in poverty or on the brink of poverty. And that's precisely because of the cancers listed in this bill. Our clients are the Black and brown people who have been summarily excluded from the best and safest neighborhoods and schools, unable to build intergenerational wealth because of, as the bill rightly calls out, redlining, exclusionary zoning, and racially restrictive covenants. They are our elders suffering from, quote, unequal exposure to environmental and health hazards, fighting for the disability benefits they need to simply live. And they are the victims of our failed and racist experiment in mass incarceration, living in areas with high imprisonment rates, seeking criminal records expungements so they can simply work and contribute. Now, I'm sure the secretary and the assistant secretary would agree this is not a spike the football moment. The hard work is in actually identifying these just communities. You know, neighborhoods like Cherry Hill and Aberdeen and Rolling Hills and historic Sharp Leadenhall, Crisfield. And most importantly, we have to guarantee that actual money, not promises, not plans, money, actually flows to these communities who so richly deserve it. But the journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. And so we're proud to support this bill and the powerful message that it sends about our state's values. We look forward to working with you on next steps. And to close, I'll just say that these programs take time. And in the meantime, our lawyers are fanned out across the state in these communities, serving them right at this minute. And we look forward to your support for Maryland Legal Aid as well. But thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, who'd you like to go next, Ms. Secretary?
Hi.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Madam Vice Chair, and members of the committee. I'm Cynthia Herrera. I serve as Senior Director of Climate, Energy, and Equity with the Green and Healthy Homes Initiative. I'm here to in favor of SB 308 as it institutionalizes environmental justice, prioritizing dedicated resources to zip codes who are currently living with legacy pollution, centering families systemically excluded from opportunities for improvement, who wake up every day facing cumulative impacts from social, economic, health, and environmental stressors, and they're exacerbated now by climate change. The bill addresses unsafe and unstable housing environments that produce health disparities for young children, families, and older adults. This including rates of lead poisoning, asthma episodes, so also including hospitalization and ER visits. It also includes household injuries, as well as energy and medical cost burdens. Because overburdened communities often use a higher percentage of their income to pay for basic health and energy needs, that creates a tremendous stressor financially because of the limited resources they have. SB 308 stands to designate access to funding resources for every family who wants to be a part of our zero emission economy. It also allows us to meet as a state our ambitious climate goals. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's go to the other end of the table.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Chairman Feldman, Vice Chair Kagan, and the committee. My name is Danesta Hunt. I'm the president and CEO of Maryland Philanthropy Network. And Maryland Philanthropy Network is a nonprofit statewide institution made up of 110 foundations, family foundations, corporate foundations, philanthropic entities who are working to improve Maryland. And we stand in support of Senate Bill 308. We represent philanthropy who likes, enjoys, and takes pride in partnering with government. And this bill really speaks to righting historical wrongs, and we are in support of that. To ground the issue, MPN has a significant number of members who care about and fund Baltimore communities, which is likely to receive a Just Communities designation. What we see historically and looking at Baltimore City is what some call the white L and the black butterfly, where disinvestment policies, practices that have led to communities that don't receive resources. And that ranges from lack of adequate housing, public schools that are underfunded, neighborhoods that lack amenities, and other poor social determinants of health. And these negative indicators and disparities show up specifically in the black butterfly and the white L. We know that there are a number of MPN members who supported public-private partnerships such as the Healthy Neighborhoods Initiative that have worked with pooling public funds and private funds to have impact in neighborhoods. So philanthropy, as you can see, is a great partner with state grant makers, with state as grant makers, and are connected to nonprofits and small communities. Philanthropic dollars, however, don't do it all. So public dollars are needed to right the wrongs of long-term investment and to institutionalize long-term reinvestment. So we applaud the Moore-Miller administration who are really working to operationalize public-private partnerships. Philanthropy is willing to be a partner to the government at all levels, and we strongly support a favorable response to Senate Bill 308.
Okay, thank you. And plan cleanup, we have.
And thank you. I am Tasha Gresham James, Executive Director for Dundalk Renaissance, and just coming also as a favorable, just hoping that the committee will definitely vote in favor of this bill, just to lend, not only will this right past wrongs, but this just puts the intentionality on our state to make sure that communities of low to moderate income families are just seen as people, given that they want to thrive and survive, not just survive, but thrive. And so we hope that you do vote in favor of this bill. It makes a difference. It will just also add on to all of the other assets that we have through the Secretary's plan for through DHCD to just make sure that our communities thrive and that we can support the growth of our future of our state and all of our counties surrounding. Thank you.
Okay, any questions for the secretary or the panel? Senator Gallion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, Mr. Secretary. So as I was looking through the testimony, I would like to get your take on the letter of information that came from MACO. So they brought up concerns about how broad the legislation is and the possibility that your department would be picking winners and losers with existing funds, not adding any, this doesn't call, I don't believe, for additional funding. So what's your response to that?
Senator, thank you. I want to point out that we are asking for and expecting significant additional funding in this year's budget. And while the bill itself doesn't speak to which programs would be affected, doesn't speak to the precise geography that would be included, what it does is it sets a framework for selecting where dollars are going to go based on the facts on the ground. Today, we prioritize, we have $1 in funding today for every $6 in requests that we get for our state revitalization program monies. All of those dollars are restricted to sustainable communities, which is a small subset of geography within all 24 jurisdictions. But sustainable communities is again, a very small footprint. What that does is it focuses us on core communities, but that core geography is not focused in any way to acknowledge past damage of policymaking. It doesn't acknowledge any of our history. It doesn't acknowledge the reality of the ground in terms of outcomes, nor what we want to produce to right those wrongs and have better outcomes, or whether we're talking about health, environment, justice, criminal justice, you name it. It's agnostic to those things. But obviously, we want to move the needle on all those fronts. So today, we're making prioritization decisions about where to put that $1 that we have for every $6 in requests into those areas. What this does is it says you ought to have a framework for doing it. You ought to have a framework for doing it. And it ought to be rooted not only in the facts on the ground in terms of the measurables, but also acknowledging how you got here. So that's really what this bill does. It directs the governor to undertake this work. It directs our agency to actualize or operationalize that work. And I think maybe the most important takeaway is we could certainly have done this as an agency action, but we're here today to acknowledge that anchoring this in law and having the Maryland General Assembly say that we must do this today and moving forward, I think gives it the time span, the time horizon that it'll actually take to make change in our communities.
So one other question. So I was looking at the fiscal note here, and it kind of describes the different the things that are listed, including that this will be based off forms of legal racial segregation, demolition of residential neighborhoods, state imprisonment rate, $750 per 100,000 persons, and then unequal exposure to environmental and health hazards. My question is first part is the state imprisonment rate. Do we dictate any other policy off of a state imprisonment rate like that?
Senator, that's a good question. Whether or not there are other policies that direct resources on that basis, I'm not sure. But I do think it's a good and critical measure to add to our holistic look at concentrated effects of past racial discriminatory action that government was responsible for, which includes the effects on imprisonment.
Okay. So that one thing I wasn't sure also on this, I don't see anything about like income levels mentioned in there. I mean, was that taken into consideration like a medium income levels or something like that to put in there so that this could be helping maybe the most economically disadvantaged of us?
Absolutely. And I want to be clear that there are going to be inputs such as household income that are not articulated, but will be considered. We want to have a holistic picture of where concentrated damage has been done, which includes poverty. So the effect on socioeconomics, just as the effect on criminal justice outcomes, the effect on environmental health, all of those things are worth measuring and worth factoring into the ultimate the ultimate right layering of information to produce the targeted geography that we're looking for.
Okay, thank you for those answers. I just have, on the an imprisonment thing, it kind of brings up some almost the way I read, almost like it's almost rewarding I feel like a negative behavior is being rewarded when you're adding that in instead of what I think would be maybe a more fair is if you're looking at more at poverty, but thank you.
And Senator, if I could just say, can we come back to you with, in writing with some additional thoughts on that?
Okay, we're going to go to Senator Augustine next, and then we'll go to Senator Carros after that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, this is a great bill.
Thank you, Senator.
I'm grateful for it. Particularly addressing things like the over incarceration of Black people versus others, unjustifiably so. I think that really is an important thing that we're acknowledging with this. With that being said, I do think that we should work on some of the language and how you might make these designations. So you mentioned the sustainable communities, which is great. You educated me on that. I mean, there's a process for how those are designated. And would you be open to some more conversations about how these would be designated such that maybe it's a little tighter than what it is currently, or what's being initially proposed at least?
Yeah, Senator, I think what we've done here is maximize flexibility. And if in the process of discussing that flexibility that's built in, we come to a tighter understanding, I think we're open to that conversation.
Okay, very good. The second thing that I would like to say is that I understand not putting the dollars to it, but is there a way for us to perhaps have some targets or some goals or something? I can see not having that, but just perhaps a way for us to communicate that we want this to be a significant amount, but not sort of tie what you're doing, just so that we have sort of a measure of how this would work, or something that does something like that.
Sure. So, Senator, I think what I would do is say that the administration's planning process on the next version of measuring for results, trying to be outcomes driven, data driven. We want to do the same with any geographic targeting. We want to be oriented on what change are we producing. We're here to produce different outcomes than got us to where we are today. So I would say if we can put this in the context of this year, asking for the authority to conduct the mapping, which will get us to a place where we can begin to geographically target dollars, in tandem with the mapping exercise, in tandem with the creation of the designation, the exercise of mapping data to identify the geography where we should focus resources. One of the things that we would hope to do, and I think can be reported back to the General Assembly with the level of specificity I think you're looking for, is to say, and here are the outcomes we expect to produce. The next logical question is, and what will it cost to produce those outcomes? And I don't think we're there yet. So in tandem with our mapping exercise, I think we can produce for you a set of anticipated outcomes as a result of those efforts, or where we'd like to get within the geography that's focused. And as a result, we can come back to you and say, and here's what dollar amounts, or here's what percentage of state revitalization programs or other programs might need to be targeted into those areas to produce said outcomes.
Okay, so I can get that. If we could perhaps flesh this out a little bit more so that we are able to share, because I share some of that as legislative intent that goes a little bit further than what's here. Would you be open to that?
I'm open to that conversation. You have anything you want to add to that?
I don't. Thank you, Senator.
Then yes.
Oh,
yes.
I think we're in place.
Yes, I'm open.
I
to
think the
that
bottom line is
conversation
they're
as well.
open to the
Yes,
conversation.
absolutely.
Because don't forget, we got to remind you, now that we've had the hearing, the bill's in the possession of the committee here, so you don't have any choice but to deal with us on that's just
Understood, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Okay, we're gonna go to Senator Carrozza, Senator Kagan, and then Senator Washington, Senator Simon Aaron. Okay, so Senator Carrozza, you're up.
So thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be brief, and it's a little bit to follow up on the clarifying aspect. Also, given your sensitivity of not only municipalities, but counties, the impression that I'm hearing is, we'll set up the infrastructure and you should not be too concerned about the communities you represent that might not get the just destination because you're looking for the supplemental funding. But the concern some of us would have is the current budget situation that we're facing, and which means to do the just community additional funding, would you be looking at, and if it's not supplemental funding, are there programs that the governor can automatically make those adjustments? And then there are some programs that have formulas that the General Assembly would have to be involved in that. And I think the little bit of angst might be kind of striking that balance, given that there might be criteria, and that you have communities that won't fit that, and will they still be able to tap other resources knowing that they have needs as well?
Senator, I think I can respond to that and maybe put your mind at ease. One, I want to make sure that I'm not directly connecting additional funds in Project Core, Bernie, NED, any of the state revitalization programs that are proposed to have additional funds in the governor's budget to the Just Communities designation. Those two things are not directly linked, but I do think it's important that we are under-resourced, not only in terms of demand, but we are under-resourced in terms of the outcomes we want to produce. It is going to take more capital, and I believe, I've said this before, and maybe every secretary would sit here and say the same thing to you, but I believe we've got the numbers to back it up, that the best use of a state dollar is through our state revitalization programs. The economic return and the private leverage speaks for itself. But that being said, to your point, I want to point out that just communities will inherently exist within the geographic boundaries of sustainable communities. They are clearly subsets of sustainable communities, not because of statute, but because of the nature of how sustainable communities have been designated throughout the state, which are themselves a subset of priority funding areas. That already limits where our programmatic dollars can go, where our capital resources can go. And I do want to point out that this affects capital dollars primarily, not operating. So it's not as if there are organizations that would be shortchanged operating dollars or anything like that. So it concentrates some of those resources within the boundaries of each of Maryland's 24 jurisdictions' sustainable communities. And let's be honest, those are the areas that are in the worst place. They are in the worst way with respect to their physical infrastructure, their housing conditions, you name it. Whether or not there even is a vibrant retail environment, and what it lacks, we can make up for in part with state revitalization program money and other DHCD programs, but that being number one. So I would say, again, this is a concentration of resources on the basis of data. The way that we are doing it today, and we are already doing this, is through agency choice. We select competitively using our value set, which maybe aligns to this today, but doesn't necessarily have to tomorrow. And this is asking the General Assembly to say, we'd like you to direct us that this is the value set upon which that we will use to concentrate limited dollars. We don't have endless resources for this, limited dollars into the areas most in need, that have been most damaged by the very policies that we as government have created in the past. I hope that answered your question, Senator.
Okay, Vice Chair Kagan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Of course, right after I took a bite of salad here, breakfast. Assistant Secretary Guggenauer. I hope I got that close. Say it for us again.
It's Guggenauer.
Guggenauer, thank you. Well, welcome aboard and congratulations. Mr. Secretary, thank you for your leadership. This is the perfect, in my opinion, the perfect manifestation of the Leave No One Behind that the Moore Miller administration is so committed to. So I just want to share in the public space something from my district, and I'm going to be a little bit parochial here, and I guess I want to be a little bit cautious about only looking through an income-based lens. So I might disagree with my friend and colleague here. I loved the phrasing of the repairing past wrongs. And I just want to tell a very brief story of when the Red Line in Metro came up to Rockville and beyond. It bisected the city of Rockville in two places. And in one place, there is a vehicular bridge, an overpass. And the other place, which connects to a historic African-American community of Lincoln Park, there was a pedestrian bridge. And it was ugly and dark and scary and not okay. And the head of the, I guess it was the SCLC at the time, went to that bridge and held a press conference, and it was a million years ago. And when I first ran for office, I actually brought Governor Glendening with me and the mayor to walk across the bridge, because I had walked across it one night after door knocking and walked across it alone in the dark, and I didn't like it. And the residents of Lincoln Park shouldn't have to deal with that. So it's not that Lincoln Park is an affluent community. It is a historic community. It is now more diverse, I think, than it used to be, but it is a historic African-American community, and there was a wrong that was committed there. And so I do just want to make sure that we are open-minded enough that we are looking at wrongs that are not necessarily related to income, but that may be related just to race or just to other factors. And so I just want to put that out in the public discourse for your consideration. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. I don't know that that was really a question, so we're going to go to, was there a question in that, or was it more commentary? Do you have a question?
What are your thoughts?
Yes, thank you, Senator. I would love to speak to that. Economic outcomes are, they're an indicator of health, wealth. I think we think very specifically about the sharpest edge of economic inequality, which is very important when we talk about poverty. There are many kinds of poverties, and that is what I would offer, and really thinking holistically about economic inequality in these days and times where we understand, wealth gaps, asset gaps, income gaps, differentials in wages, appraisals, many interlocking challenges that I think this legislation and this mapping process allow us to be really comprehensive in how we're looking at communities. It is being able to use existing data, also thinking about other data that maybe hasn't been brought in, especially if we're thinking about things like social determinants of health, right? It's a very complex kind of algorithm, for lack of a better word, to think about why people are where they are in these days and times. And perhaps part of the righting the wrongs of the past is looking at, a significant investment in place over time that we still are seeing growing inequalities for people. And so that a lot of the work for me is, how do we think about placemaking, placekeeping, and really thinking about, equity. My shorthand is, thinking about people furthest from justice and serving them first, fastest, and the most. There is something about growing the pie is the only other thing that I would want to say. We have an unprecedented opportunity in this country in this moment. I think it really showed up after the pandemic and, the reckoning, that moment that happened afterward. There is a lot more money committed to serving people who are most disparately impacted. I think every sector's consideration, if it's private sector, public sector, philanthropy, as we've seen with the executive orders from, the governor, the president, people want to see that all of these investments are going to the people who are most impacted, and that we're preserving place and, building healthy places over time that can withstand climate inequalities. So that's the only thing I would add. I really like what you've shared. And if we can think really holistically about economics, I think that helps us to really think about who will be served by this legislation.
Thank you. Secretary Gogenauer, I love the reliance on data, but sometimes data doesn't get us all the information that we want. And so I'd like to suggest for your consideration as you start in this position and as this new position is created, perhaps listening tours in various counties, in each county or each community, be considered. Larger communities may need more than one, but sussing out stories like that aren't going to show up on a data chart because it goes back decades and decades, but doesn't make the headlines and stuff anymore and might not come out through charts and graphs. So for your consideration.
Thank you for that. It's almost as though you read my position description, which the significant amount of the work that I'll do is actually liaising with communities to get the qualitative and being able to pair it with something quantitative as well.
Perfect. And my last comment then, and then I will, is as you reach out to communities, I hope you will consider keeping the 188 members of the House and Senate informed when you're coming to our communities, because many of us do have history and stories and people that we can suggest you connect with.
Absolutely.
That'd be great.
I welcome that opportunity. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank
Okay,
you.
we're going to next
Thank
go
you,
to Senator Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Secretary Day, and all of you. With this, I support the vision, and we had conversations earlier this summer about this. And I particularly, there's sections of it that read like legislative intent language. And it just sort of sets a broader sort of picture and aspirational goals, particularly the section 6-1202, where you're encouraging us to find that just communities, you know, are the things for just communities. So I actually have, and I think I'll be talking with you about this tomorrow, but I have 3 pieces of legislation that fits very closely with what you're talking about and creates districts. And I think it also addresses some of what my colleagues are saying around trying to actually quantify it. There's another component of the bill that's interesting. It's like your bill, I understand that the governor, is the governor creating these districts? I mean, it seems like the governor, upon your recommendation.
That's correct.
Okay.
So Senator, yes, the department would conduct the mapping and propose the districts based on the result of that mapping to the governor, who would make the designation.
Well, just to give you an example, I think of the type of specificity that my colleagues might be looking for. My legislation creates community reinvestment districts, and it looks at census block group levels that have things like average rate of unemployment, adult population, some proportion of the adult population who are on parole and probation, because why that matters is that impacts communities. Unemployment rate, looking at least 50% of the adult population over the age of 30 have not graduated from high school. So these are some very targeted things. And then it also provides a way to look at a history of redlining, or more specifically, because it has to do with your department, specifically the Homeowners Loan Corporation. So that is a measure that I don't know if the history of the department would go back that way, but you can actually go and look, and find that. And then I also know, I really appreciate that and I am looking for feedback on these measures. And I do appreciate the need for the partnership of the philanthropic community. And I do understand how creating such districts or guidance can help you have more impact on your work and partnership. Another feature that I think is missing that I have in my work, and maybe why there's some concern from MACO and some of the others, is the ability of local governments to be able to define these or to request these. So my legislation actually authorizes county governments or this other entity that I create in another bill to do these types of things. And very specifically, it says if you're going to create these districts, then 20% of the money of some kind of fund should focus. Like you just say, hey, we're going to, we have 100% of money, but no less than 20% of it is going to go in these kinds of things. So I think, so while, I like the bill, it's that kind of sort of specificity. And then there's kind of an overlap between environmental justice work and then housing. And I actually think we can have different districts. So I have another bill that creates environmental justice districts and use certain measures. But the measures that I hear are actually measures that researchers have found that are really consistent with some of the overall objectives. But I'm just wondering if, what you think about those, and, perhaps we can work together, and, my bill, your bill, and maybe what other people are working on. But it's that level of specificity that I think would make people more comfortable.
Senator, I don't want to speak for anybody else on the panel. So just speaking for myself and for DHCD, I think we'd be very interested in working with you on your legislation as well. And I do think there can be multiple tools for focusing resources based on what we're trying to affect. This bill is trying to look through the lens of justice. And certainly there are specific outcomes that we can move the needle on, whether it's the Enough Act on child poverty, whether it's your bill oriented on environmental justice. I think all of these things can work in tandem. And I also think that if we were to categorize broadly, if I'm hearing you correctly, if we were to categorize broadly inputs, there are some of those districts that would be appropriate. And I think there are kind of three categories, and you may have a different way of looking at this, but one would be local knowledge, the input of local elected officials of where do we want the resources to go. That's certainly something that, for example, the RISE zone, which is something we had in Salisbury, which is a state established zone, that you create that with local knowledge as a factor. Another category would be data relevant to the conditions on the ground today. So whether that's a number of persons within a given area who are on parole or probation, whether that's certain measures of lead poisoning, whatever it might be. And a third might be the facts of history. What got us here? Let's look at the redlining map. Let's look at where buildings were acquired to build a highway, and where wealth, particularly wealth concentrated once in Black communities, is gone. And was taken away at pennies on the dollar. So I think if we were to categorize those three, this bill focuses on the latter two, the facts on the ground and the history that got us here. There are other geographic designations that put a stronger emphasis on local knowledge, rightly so, I think. So whether or not that has real relevance here, or if we should strictly look at the other two inputs, I think is up for debate. But generally speaking, I think we ought to consider all three buckets in a variety of different geographic targeting areas.
So in other words, I follow you when you said that this is about further delineating and targeting the priority area funding. So that helped me understand what you were trying to do, so that we have this very big bucket of priority funding. And then within that, you have sustainable communities, and then that's restricted, right? And so, but you'd like an opportunity to be able to double down in some areas where a little bit here, like just, over 20 years, just 20,000 here, 50,000, just really
we're not
has
producing
not made
outcomes.
any impact. So I absolutely get that. So the extent to which what we end up with is allowing for this targeted investment is more important than drawing the lines, right? So in other words, if there's some ways to draw the lines, in others, there can be all kinds of lines and all kinds of ways to do it, but it's really being able to have the ability to target in a smaller geographic area. Am I understanding that?
And to ensure that lasts for many years to come.
Right. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And that's why you want to codify it.
Yes.
I understand that. Additionally, I want to say something about the black butterfly and the white L. So, I know I know that, and it's been a great intervention and helping to understand. However, the level of geography is so large that there are areas within Baltimore City and other areas where, because of the proximity of different types of people, wealthy people living right next to underemployed people and African American, right? Like hyper segregation kind of has this result where my district often looks like it's in the white L. And I will tell you that that's to characterize it at that as like that says that there are no areas of need, right? Particularly if it's like just middle class or working class areas. So I think that there are some ways in which we could just speak more directly. And that's why I suggest looking at the census block group level, because that's what even I had to do when we were working on this bill. It's like, oh, I look, even if I take a census level area, the income is like just way high. But if I split it into this side of the street and that side of the street, things drop differently. So, but you all are getting it and you're nodding. And I think you agree in that there are lots of portions of our state in Crisfield and the shore. There's lots of places where, while there might not have been social interaction or whatever, people live right next to each other and you can miss opportunities to provide funds for people who need it.
Right, absolutely, Senator Washington. I only use that as an example that we do have data that looks at multiple layers of disinvestment in multiple areas and multiple indicators. We also have the Baltimore Neighborhood Indicators Alliance, which looks at very specific areas
but
by
even the CSAs though, the way they did it, they put them together and they put these I know it's that I've made my point and it looks like I need to stop.
And the only thing that I would add about foundations is that we don't just bring money to the table, we also bring research. So the ABLE Foundation, the Goldsecker Foundation, our community foundations invest a good bit of money into actually understanding their geographies and can bring that learning, both quantitative and qualitative data, to help us create just communities in a just way. Yeah.
Okay, Senator Simon, you had your earlier. Okay, we're good. Okay, well, thank you, folks. That was solid testimony on all fronts, and you can get on with the rest of your day. We do have some other witnesses signed up. Chuck, were you signed up, but you're not testifying? Okay, so let me go through the remaining list of witnesses on this bill. In every case, they're signed up favorable. Yes, she's on the list. We've got Felicia Porter, Baltimore City Council, District 10. I'm just going to go through Claudia Wilson Randall. Is Ms. Randall here? We've got Tricia Swanson on behalf of Care First. Again, we've got 5 seats up here. We're going to fill them up. Betty Bland Thomas, come on up. And then finally, Jennifer Vey. And I think that's the extent of the witnesses. So I called 5 names. There's 4 witnesses. So one of the folks.
I think she's out in the hallway.
Okay.
He stepped out to go to another bill, but I don't know.
Okay. Well, why don't you have a seat and we'll figure it all out. Okay. So got our city council member from Baltimore City. Why don't you lead off? And from District 10, Felicia Porter. Welcome. So why don't you start and then we'll take it from there. Okay.
Thank you so much, Chair Feldman, Vice Chair Kagan, and members of the committee. For the record, I am Felicia Porter, Councilwoman representing District 10 on the Baltimore City Council. Today, we stand on the precipice of a transformative opportunity. We have the chance to redefine the trajectory of my communities to correct injustices of the past and to pave a way for the future where equity, justice, and an opportunity to thrive for all. It's with great urgency and determination that I stand here before you today to advocate for the establishment of the Just Community designation. For far too long, the communities that I serve in South Baltimore have become the brunt of systemic disinvestment, exclusionary policies, and radicalized poverty. And they're still living this way today. These communities, often marginalized and overlooked, have faced disproportionate challenges in accessing quality education, healthcare, employment opportunities, and basic infrastructure. And Senator Washington, I definitely appreciate your delineation. That's something that we are going through down in the district as well. So I definitely appreciate that. These consequences of neglect are stark and undeniable, manifesting the entrenched poverty, substandard living conditions, and profound disparities in the health and well-being of the communities that I serve every day. But today, with this designation, we have the opportunities to implement a very proactive, data-driven approach to direct state resources where they are most needed, into communities grappling with the legacy of disinvestment and inclusion. District 10, South Baltimore, serves as a poignant example of the urgent need for action. Despite its rich cultural heritage, we are still plagued with environmental justice issues. We're plagued with health to economic instability and inadequate transportation infrastructure. And as a council member, having the opportunity to empower my communities to continue to be resilient is only compounded to the effect that we are here today. In closing, I'll just say, it's not enough to continue to support this particular designation. When you talk about the connection between local governments and city governments into state governments, that's what government is doing right. That's what government is supposed to be doing. And so having those opportunities to go in the district, see what's happening day in and day out in these communities will definitely impact not only this designation, but communities that are in Montgomery County, that are in Howard County, that are in the city of Baltimore, that are across the Eastern Shore, to make sure that all Marylanders have an opportunity to thrive in their neighborhoods and communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Ms. Swanson, Mike's right in front of you. Why don't you want to go next, and then we'll go to the
that's hard to follow, but
Yes.
but I'll try. I'm Tricia Swanson, Director of Government Affairs for Care First Blue Cross Blue Shield, here in support of Senate Bill 308. As a healthcare company, addressing social determinants of health is core to our mission. We care for over 3.5 million people across the region, and they entrust us with their health at their most vulnerable times in their lives. And we can't fully and effectively support our members without understanding the social and environmental circumstances that exist in and around their community. And data tells us that these social determinants of health, affect 80% of someone's health. In particular, Care First serves a higher need population. 36% of our members face a financial strain. 39% of our members face housing instability. So for these reasons, Care First strongly supports Senate Bill 308 and applaud the work that the DHCD is doing to better the lives of Marylanders across the state. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Why don't we go back over here, and then we'll go down there and tell us who you are.
Surely. My name is Betty Bland Thomas. I am a community leader in a historic community in South Baltimore called Historic Sharp Latin Hall. I'm here as a resident as well as a community leader to give my support to this bill. And first of all, let me say hello also to the committee. I'm not used to being in this sort of format. I'm used to sitting at a table arguing with people. But I'm here to let you know that I am an example of what redlining has done. I am an example what happened with the highway to nowhere. I have witnessed people lose their homes and forced to move outside. The impact of that is trauma. And I think the people in Sharp Latin Hall had felt if we just be quiet, maybe they'll leave us alone. But that's not the case. Not being quiet is not the solution. Standing up and making some noise. So even though they were fearful to come down here today, because this is not an environment in which they're used to. This is an environment that does have a lot of Black history, but also look at what you've done with your Black history. What we're trying to do in our community is be designated so that we can have some leverage to an opportunity to share in the wealth of our city. I want to say some words I think that reflect how I feel that has happened to us. Mass destruction, eminent domain, historic disinvestment, exclusion from equal opportunities to participate in investment and the planning of our environment, health crisis, high cases of asthma, diabetes, and more. Gentrification. What does gentrification do? It pushes you out of your home if you are low income. It creates environments that don't reflect your needs, but needs of persons of higher income. And what that does to an individual, it causes more stress and oppression. So I think with designation, we're not asking for a handout. We're able to help ourselves. We just want fairness. Real quick story. I live next to a very affluent neighborhood. We both go to the planning department to basically advocate for similar things. Her issue was ushered in quickly. My issue was told to go back, talk to your city council. So everything is not always done fairly in that regard. So I want you to know designation will be powerful in increasing the opportunity so that we can continue in the wealth circle. We want to give back. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to our final witness. Tell us who you are.
Sure. Good afternoon, and thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. I'm Jennifer Vey. I'm the Executive Vice President for Policy and Research at the Greater Baltimore Committee. GBC is the leading voice for the private sector in Greater Baltimore, with a focus on fostering inclusive economic development in the 7-county Baltimore region. GBC is here in support of Senate Bill 308. As discussed in the Comptroller's 2023 State of the Economy report that just came out recently, Maryland is facing slow economic growth compared to many of its peers, and the same is true for the Baltimore region as well. And this is due in no small part to the fact that many of its low-income and Black residents have for decades been systematically disadvantaged as a result of federal, state, and local policy and investment decisions that have devalued, segregated, and sometimes actually physically destroyed their neighborhoods. Today, many of these residents, even those who aren't themselves low-income, are concentrated in high poverty communities that lack the businesses and the services and the amenities enjoyed by their white peers. Businesses and services and amenities that not only improve residents' quality of life, but also help them access employment, build wealth, and ultimately support the region's economic growth. The Just Community designation will help in righting some of the wrongs of both the past and the present by prioritizing resources for areas that have long been on the short end of the funding stick. This is sound policy as it helps catalyze investments in housing and small business corridors and in infrastructure that are essential to residents' social, physical, and economic health and well-being, as well as overall regional prosperity. The Greater Baltimore Committee will serve a leadership role by working with our private and public sector partners to position the region and the whole state of Maryland for competitive opportunities that grow our economy, while ensuring that disinvested communities and their residents are fully part of that growth. For these reasons, we support the passing of the bill and will be an active partner in ensuring how best it has positive impacts. Thank you.
Okay, before I open up, I had called Claudia Wilson Randall. I don't know, somebody thought she might be out in the lobby, going once, twice. Is Ms. Randall out there? Maybe just do Dom a quick shout out. Nobody? Okay. Fair enough. Okay, members, questions? Senator Washington.
First of all, I want to thank you so much. It's important to hear from the community stakeholders. I want to start off by congratulating Ms. Bland Thomas on winning the 2023, I think it is Neighborhood Spotlight Award. You've been in this fight for a very long time. So your answer to this question is really important. I mean, of course it's important, but I'd like to hear it. The districts are created, the governor creates the districts with the recommendation of DHCD. And I know you're familiar with the creation of districts for purposes of target money, for example, the casino revenue money. So and what's good about this is that the state, we have a direct relationship with the state. So I really like that DHCD is establishing that the state of Maryland can communicate directly with residents. I think that's really, with communities. But in terms of the governance and how the decisions are made about how the money is allocated, what would you like to see? Because the bill is silent on, I'm assuming that it's designated, it would have the authority to receive and raise money, et cetera. But what kind of structure do you think we should have that? Yeah, what do you think?
Well, Ms. Washington, when I made the statement, I'm often at the table arguing. I think it's important that we have community representation at that table. No one could speak better for us than us. And that way we're assured that there's fairness. We're assured that we're participating equally and also benefiting equally, as well. I do think there has to be extra consideration given to those communities that historically have been disinvested on. They have a lot of work to bring us back up. They made promise to us of what they were going to do, but they have not done. You could take a look at a video that our community made called Sharp Leadenhall, A Promise to Keep. Or you could look at WBAL today at 5:45. I'll be on talking about Black history. I've been an advocate for over 40 years. It has not always been fair, but designation might give me another arm to be at that table, or whomever's at that table, that the table be transparent. Let us know who they are. If we can't be at the table, we're gonna call them and let them know how we feel to make sure there's more fairness, in this opportunity. So I think that's most important.
And then your neighborhood is near Cherry Hill and just so that people know where you are, that you're
Okay.
adjacent to other
Well,
communities that have testified.
yeah.
I mean, you're around that area.
MT Stadium is in my backyard.
So just so
Federal Hill is on the other side. So we were once a much vast community, but due to Highway to Nowhere, half our community was taken for eminent domain. And those homeowners were forced to leave. They then turned it into what I would consider a luxury community called Audubon. The city took the houses, made them available to those whites who could afford to be in what's called the dollar house development. So literally across the street from an affordable apartment complex, there are condos. There are apartment units that cost over $4,000. And we're living together and we're making out. We do have our differences, but we do communicate. And I think it's most important.
4,000 a month or 400,000?
Oh, no, 4,000 a month. Some of those people.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Just to clarify.
But because of gentrification, it's increasing the market rate of the affordable units.
Right.
That's pricing us out. That's what I mean by gentrification. It's uprooting us. It's forcing us to move. And where are we going to move to? There's no place to go. Middle Branch is full.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, and Ms. Claudia, yeah, okay, we were looking for you. Why don't you just come up here and then you'll be our final witness?
Okay.
And the rest of you're released. We'll just have our final witness. So,
Did you already go?
yeah, everybody else went. So it's, Miss, why don't you tell us who you are? Get that mic close to you. Tell us your
Sure.
name and then you'll have 2
I'm-
minutes. You'll be on the clock, but we're still on 308. I know you're signed up also for St. Luce's bill next.
I had to go back to the house, sorry. Good afternoon. I'm Claudia Wilson Randall. I'm the Executive Director of the Community Development Network of Maryland. We are a statewide network of housing and community development organizations across the state of Maryland. I wanted to come today to testify in support of Senate Bill 308 and compliment the department for bringing the bill forward to target assistance in historically disadvantaged communities throughout the state. I was here for the beginning of the discussion. I just want to also say that today I stand on the shoulders of Harriet Tubman, Gloria Richardson, Victorine Adams, Black women in the state of Maryland, born in the state of Maryland, working for justice for the last 200 years. And we're one of the wealthiest states in one of the most wealthy countries in the world. And we need to be fiscally responsible, but we need to create opportunity in the state of Maryland. And your zip code should not tell the story of your and trajectory of your life in this state. We can be better than that. We are better than that. And we need to stop telling stories that aren't true about people who work hard and go to school and that they can make it. They can't. They need additional investment. And they need opportunity, and opportunity for many starts at home. It starts in the place that you were born. And the bedrock of inequality in this state has been housing discrimination and redlining. So with that, I just want to close to say housing and community development is health. Housing and community development is education. Housing and community development is economic development. And housing and community development are sustainability. And with that, I thank you so much and ask for your support for Senate Bill 308.
Okay, any questions for our witness? Okay, thank you. That concludes the bill hearing on Senate Bill 308. And we're going to next go to the final bill of the day. Senator Muse has been patiently waiting on Senate Bill 356. And you've got, and Secretary Day, thanks for coming by. You've designated actually Claudia Wilson Randall as one of your sponsored panelists, Tom Cole.
Yes, and I omitted, and pardon me if I may,
Sure.
ask Bob Enton from representing the
Okay,
builders.
bring-
I did not do that, but may he
That's
come
fine.
up with me?
Bring Bob up there.
Yes.
Christine Horn, again, Tom Cole. Is Tom here? Thought I saw him earlier. Okay. And Christine, Tina Horn. Okay, and Tom Cole is listed here. He was here earlier. He must have left. I'm not sure, but somebody wants to check out in the hall for him.
And that was.
That said, Senator Muse, you take the time you need to present Senate Bill 356.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, Chair Feldman, and Madam Vice Chair Kagan, and members of the Education, Energy, and Environment Committee. I'm jealous today because I wish I were on this committee because you all about to get out at 3:30. We'll be here. We'll be over on the other side. So if you got nothing to do, just come over there and sit in our place. We'd appreciate you very much.
I'm sure a lot of us will do that.
You'll be running down the door, right? Thank you. I want to thank my panel for being here with us as well. Senate Bill 356 is a simple step in addressing the issue of affordable housing across the state of Maryland. Coming in on the end of the last testimony, I heard some very good points as to why we need affordable housing. This bill would require a local jurisdiction to establish and implement an expedited development review process specifically for charitable organization proposing to develop affordable housing and on land they own, or a public housing authority proposing to develop affordable housing on land owned by a nonprofit or government entity. 9 out of 24 jurisdictions in Maryland already have this expedited process. I'm sorry, of many 47, no, that's right. 24 jurisdictions in Maryland already have expedited review processes. Therefore, this bill would make this process standard across the state. According to DHCD, Maryland has an overall housing shortage across the state of 85,000 housing units, a shortage. Further, with the housing crisis across the country, which has increased as a result of the pandemic, the need for affordable housing has skyrocketed. SB 356 is an important step towards giving our Maryland constituents who make less than $50,000 annually access to affordable housing. And as you stated, especially those who did the right thing, as we say in America, they went to school, they're trying to get a job, they do have a job, but they're still not making enough just to have a decent house. In closing, in this bill, we do not define what fast tracking projects mean. Instead, SB 356 leaves it up to the county to decide what that would be, the form that they want to take in fast tracking projects. And there is an exemption waiver provision available to jurisdictions that in good faith believe they cannot meet the requirements of this bill. You'll see that there are several organizations that support this legislation, an entire list, and preservationalists, or from preservationalists to realtors to affordable housing advocates to builders. And this is just a simple way, one step, is not for every take care of every issue, but for every day that someone is trying to put up an affordable home that they're waiting for months and months, it costs so much. And so this is just a simple step in making it faster and simpler and cheaper. And I also hope it's a way of attracting others to do the same thing. Every little bit helps. This is a little bit here presented in this bill that I think will go a long way. I would urge and ask for a favorable report. Now turn it over to our panelists.
We'll go through the panel, then we'll open up the questions. Who wants to go first? Yeah.
Hi, Claudia Wilson Randall, Community Development Network of Maryland. Thank you so much. I am here today in support of Senate Bill 356. And I just want to thank the sponsor. I just want to say that we need production, preservation, and repair of affordable housing. And we need to align our policies behind that. So it is really important that this is one strategy. It's not going to do everything. It is one simple strategy towards the 85,000 units that we needed in 2021 and probably the 110,000 units we now need in 2024. By every measure, Maryland is short 100,000 units of affordable housing. And so we need strategies that accelerate the production of affordable housing throughout the state, whether they be for home ownership as well as multifamily. I think this land use bill is an important step because it also gives local jurisdictions to decide what fast tracking looks like to them. But it's critical for every part of the state that we begin to find ways to actually accelerate the production of affordable housing. And with that, I thank you so much for your time today, and I ask for your favorable report of Senate Bill 356. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. You want to go next, and then we'll go to Mr. Etten after that.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Tina Horn, and I am a member of the Unitarian Universalist congregation in Columbia, but I am here today representing People Acting Together in Howard, or PATH, Action in Montgomery, or AIM, and Anne Arundel Connecting Together, or ACT. Together, we are more than 65 congregations representing tens of thousands of Maryland residents. Together, we have won over $1.5 billion for affordable housing and have consistently pushed for and won more affordable housing in places across the state and in many neighbors and communities across Howard, Montgomery, and Anne Arundel counties. My son is a college student at the University of Maryland, College Park, intending a life of public service, and I do not know how he will be able to afford to live in our community once he graduates. Teachers, firefighters, nurses, and hopeful young government employees cannot afford rent, much less saving up for a house. Our congregation and our neighboring congregations have many senior citizen members who are eager to downsize and move into smaller places, but the housing is simply not available to them. Having high quality and affordable housing so close to our faith centers would be a significant lift for both seniors seeking simplification of their lives and youth seeking independence, because it would enable them to connect with each other. Senate Bill 356 could make a significant difference for the thousands of people each year who share with us that they and their families need access to affordable housing. Many of our member congregations are also struggling to make ends meet, but do have land, and they want to use their resources to give back to the community and support their neighbors who are seniors, young adults, public employees, or disabled and can't afford housing prices in our communities. Being able to build affordable housing on their land is a win-win for congregations to live into their values and to build their own financial security into the future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Etten.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Robert Etten on behalf of the Maryland Building Industry Association. And we're here in support of this bill. The cross-file of this was heard in the House yesterday. And I'm not sure who's going to come after us, but concerns were raised that you're placing a mandate on the counties. You're making the counties do this. It's a mandate. But when you read the bill, what you see is the only thing the really county has to do is adopt a process, an expedited process for planning review for the consideration of zoning changes. It doesn't say how expedited it has to be. It doesn't put parameters on it. All it says is you need to, look at this and come up with something. That's all. And on top of that, there's a provision in the bill that says that they can be exempted from having to do this. But it really doesn't place any type of real burden on them. But we think it's important because it sends a message to the counties from you all that this is something that's really important and something that has to be done. We are the building industry, we're home builders, and we are totally committed to continuing to construct affordable housing in the state of Maryland. It's a huge priority for us. It's a huge priority for you all this year, for the governor this year. And we hope that this bill will help to move that forward, and that's why we support the bill. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay, just so we do have one virtual witness and one favorable with amendment from Mako, but we're going to take questions now for this panel, and then we'll move to the one virtual witness and the one Mako piece of testimony. So Senator Watson, for either questions for Senator Muse or his panel.
Thank you. I guess it's for the panel. I have some concerns about the bill. And my concerns are a part of the briefing that I got this morning from the governor's office on a bill similar, right? And, you know, the governor's bill is talking about median income, 60% of the area median income. Your bill talks 80% of the area median income. 23rd district in Maryland probably has the biggest footprint of mega churches any place else. And the thing that concerns me is that we start getting localized areas of poverty, which I do not want. And trying to find what that balance is very, very important. Now, the governor's bill will go over and above local zoning, but allow a person, a developer, to exceed the density requirements, but offer affordable housing at a lesser rate, but they get that money back because of the additional units that they're able to build. I was very specific. Who's paying for this to allow these folks to get in there? So on the outside, they all look the same. They all look the same. You would not know who's paying more and who's not. But that reduction in cost is going to stretch out for 40 years, according to the bill. And I have to sit down and talk to Senator Augustine, who's not here, because we had some concerns, especially in our districts, because in our districts, well, in Prince George's County, the bill is talking about within a mile radius of a subway stop. Now, that doesn't impact my district that much, but it sure impacts 25th district. And so my going back to your bill, Senator, and my question is, well, let me get the simple question off first. If a nonprofit or a church who has a boatload of land in the county decides to build these housing projects, right? You know, these are regular houses. There's no tax break, no tax incentive at all for the churches, correct? That's correct. Okay. And there is a lot of land owned by these churches in my district. I just have real concerns because I have to balance the desire for our community to want to get higher in amenities. But I just sat and talked to the Retailers Association, you know, the bill I just had, and one of their decision criteria is median income. And so if we're trying to achieve this goal, and the goal I heard was 96,000 units short, I get it, and they're consolidated in one place, would that not reduce my median income and make it even harder for me to get the amenities that my community has been crying for?
Well, let me put it this way. First of all, I think
Senator
that
Muse, get the mic a little closer.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think that we already handled this well. This is already implemented in Prince George's County. So it wouldn't do anything that hasn't been done. And I think that all of your questions, I think we've done a good job in our county of making sure that all of your issues have been addressed, because it's been a part of Prince George's County for many, many years. And I think it can be a model for those counties who do not have it, who have concerns that you just raised. But this is not new for Prince George's County. It is already in place. It's already implemented and has been for many years. The bill just as it is.
Briefed on the governor's version of this same bill. This is one of his highest priorities, by the way. Have you been briefed on this?
So honestly, I wasn't able to be in two places
Okay.
at one time today, but I will get a chance to dig down. But also, I believe I share your concerns, because you're also talking about the concentration of poverty within these plans, and I do think that at the county level, they have been, particularly in the DC metro area, has been really working towards more mixed income development so that it's not 100% affordable, right? That it's a mix of market rate with affordable housing and connecting to transit-oriented development. So I do think that we see some counties successfully doing that. That is that they're going to have some luxury apartments as well as some affordable apartments near transit, and that this bill doesn't say all of those units have to, all of the units have to be affordable. And I do think that is addressed in the zoning of those counties. So, but I understand, I understand your concerns.
And I
also.
appreciate the expedited part. I mean, we loved hearing that in Prince George's County. But I would ask, and we'll have an opportunity, Senator, to sit down to take a look at both bills, but also what the governor is. I expressed a lot of concerns, which is why I got a private discussion about it. But I want to make sure you all have seen the governor's version and, do these two things mesh. Okay.
And I'll take the time to listen to the briefing.
Thank you.
Senator, if I could, just let me emphasize again that this bill doesn't require the county to do this, that, or the other. All it says is really, we want you to look at this and look at it, look at affordable housing and come up with, maybe it moves it by a week. I mean, it doesn't set any parameters. It just says, look at this, look at affordable housing and look at the expedited, having an expedited process for that. It doesn't say it's got to be expedited in this fashion or that fashion. It's totally up to the county. Just look at it and come up with some kind of plan to deal with it. That's all. You, the county, decide.
Okay, are there any additional questions for this panel or sponsor, Senator Muse? Okay, seeing none. Thank you. We do have one witness virtual. We're going to take next signed up straight favorable, and that is, and he's on our screen, Will Green. Mr. Green, you've got 2 minutes. You're on the clock, and you're again signed up favorable.
Okay. Good afternoon, friends. My name is Will Ed Green, and I'm the senior pastor of Silver Spring United Methodist Church. I also coordinate an interfaith working group of 28 faith leaders here in Montgomery County, working to help address our affordable housing crisis. Last year, our congregation voted to develop affordable housing on our campus in missional response to the news that our facility needed nearly $19 million in urgent infrastructure upgrades and repairs. And we're not alone. My denomination owns $1.4 billion in real estate in the state of Maryland alone, and 2/3 of our buildings are in serious or critical condition because of deferred maintenance. That's just our denomination. The cascading effect of these challenges threatens a vital part of the state's social safety net. By 2030, the Pew Institute estimates that nearly 100,000 religiously owned properties will be closed and sold, many of those to private developers. If that trend holds true, that includes approximately 2,742 of the 8,225 religious organizations in the state of Maryland. Yet, nearly 1/3 of all not-for-profit childcare centers in our country are located in houses of worship, including my own. Last month, 7,000 people entered our facility to receive food and housing support, clothing, recovery and mental health support, and more. A 2019 study actually shows that only 9% of people visiting houses of worship come for worship or religious education. The barriers for development are high across our state. Houses of worship generally occupy land zoned for single-family development, and the cost for rezoning can exceed $500,000, not to mention other complicated permitting and zoning processes requiring expensive legal representation. Developing affordable housing is one way houses of worship can address critical funding and infrastructure issues while still serving their communities and contributing their resources to make practical reparations for our participation in long histories of injustice and oppression embodied by zoning laws and practices which disenfranchise our siblings of color, seniors, and economically disenfranchised communities across our state. This bill offers congregation.
Yeah, you can finish your thought. Finish up, yeah.
Thank you. This bill offers congregations and other not-for-profits a path to respond missionally rather than react fearfully to the challenges they face. And it's exactly the kind of opportunity for public-private partnership needed to help us serve our most vulnerable neighbors. It also ensures that, even when congregations close, their values can remain embodied in the bricks and mortar left behind. I encourage your favorable report on Senate Bill 356, and I'm happy to answer any additional questions you might have.
Okay, we have one question from Senator Washington.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Senator, for bringing this bill. I have a question, I guess that was raised by my colleague. These properties, so we want properties, okay, if you're a local government, we want to develop properties and have more housing. Would the entities pay taxes, property taxes?
Yes, they would.
They-
Taxes in
oh,
terms
is that
of.
how it works? So it's
That's how it
different?
works. Yes, we,
Okay, so
right now on the property that any church owns, the property that our churches own is not owned. You pay for any property that is not used as the sanctuary or as the church itself. So where it's located, if a church is here, you've got 100 acres over here, yes, you do pay taxes.
Well, my understanding, I just want to clarify, my understanding is if you build a bridge from the church over to the building, it becomes attached to the sanctuary and you don't pay taxes. I also, I'm just.
And I'll tell you why
asking
it's
that.
not. I once owned a mall, and in the mall, my church was in the mall that we owned. We did have other businesses located there, and for everything other than what was cut off as a church, and this was under the same roof, every one of those places we had to pay taxes.
Okay.
So I don't know about
Maybe-
whether they connected, but I do know if we had to pay it in the same building that we owned that was a mall, only our church had the 501(c)(3) exemption, but every bit of property, everything else that was there, it was taxable to the state, the county, and federal law.
Okay, and the pastor's is.
Yeah, the
nodding
pastor
his
looks
head
like
as-
he's raising his hand, itching
Okay,
away
he
in.
agrees
So,
that-
Pastor, why don't you
Yeah.
take a crack at Senator Washington?
That was an accident in part, but I can respond because of the development that we're doing. We've been assured that even though the buildings will touch, we're actually demolishing a portion of our building and building behind our sanctuary space, that even though those buildings will be connected, we'll have to subdivide the land so that all the pieces upon which housing exists are taxable.
Okay, thank you. And then what if, is there still, maybe just tax laws change, is there still an exemption if there's a childcare facility or some other services being provided in the building? If there's a dual purpose in the building, you're offering, it's a senior center and you're offering food support or et cetera, or one of the offices has that exemption gone away or does that still exist?
It's my understanding from our lawyers' feedback to us that the building, even if those services are being offered, would be taxable, but there's no.
Okay.
exemption.
That's correct.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, any additional questions for the sponsor or for the witnesses? Seeing none, thank you, Senator.
And thank you,
Good
and
luck. Get back to JPR.
and
got a
you
long
all are
night ahead.
still invited, by the way, to
Yes.
come over and be with us, and I'm looking forward to your.
Absolutely, yes. Okay, well, thank you. And our final witness on the bill is Dom. Why don't you come up? We've got Dominic Butchko from Mako, signed up favorable with amendments.
Yeah.
Dom, you've got time to present the bill.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, 2 days in a row finishing strong. So thank you. Mako is support with amendments on Senate Bill 536. So first, if you don't know, housing is one of our top 4 initiatives this year. I hear we have a phenomenal bill that dropped on housing, but we're going to be out supporting a number of pieces of legislation. Specifically on this one, we have 2 minor clarifying amendments. The first one is the AMI percentage. So in the bill, it says 80% AMI. A lot of our folks are telling us that that's really close to market rate and has certain ramifications. Oh, sorry, area median income. Forgot about that. Acronyms. But yes, so we just want to get the area median income, AMI, lowered from 80% to 60%. Additionally, we'd just like some clarification around DHCD, Department of Housing and Community Development, offering the waiver. Our counties have very diverse systems for land use and processing this. And so there's just some concerns that DHCD might not have the familiarity or the understanding or the teams to be able to do this. So whether that's in coordination with planning or whatever, just some clarity around that. But I mean, good bill. With that, we ask for those amendments. Thank you.
Okay, any question from our witness on behalf of Mako? Okay, seeing none, that concludes the hearing on Senate Bill 356, and that concludes our bill hearings for today.